All right, folks, thank you all for coming to the How Not to Burn Out panel. It's very interesting timing on this panel because I'm pretty burned out. I was up till 5:45 in the morning, and I'm now monitoring your panel on How Not to Burn Out. So, what we have here are some podcast creators who are doing their shows or their blogs for a long enough period of time that they've had to battle with the concept of why am I doing this? How do I keep doing it? And oh my God, it's got to be up by tomorrow. How am I going to pull it off? So there's a thing that we call Podfading, which is as soon as you start producing a podcast or a blog, it's almost like a ticking clock. There will be a time in which you cannot continue. There's like after 4 or 5 weeks, you're like, I need a break. I need to stop doing this. This needs to not be part of my weekly existence anymore. You guys have somehow managed to fight through this on numerous occasions, and I say you guys, I'm part of this as well. We've been producing Something to Be Desired for 6 years now. We're actually starting on Monday our 6th season, and actually at the end of the session here, before we all take off, if you want to stick around, I'll be premiering the first episode of our 6th season at 10:45, so you can see what I was doing till 5:45. So here on the panel, let me go through. I'll let them introduce themselves to you. We'll start off with Johnny Goldstein because I have his site up.
Hey, I'm Johnny Goldstein. And
I say Steen, you say Stein.
It's okay.
That's the
It's all right. And some parts of the world they say Stein. That's the real deal. So I'm a little watered down. But so actually, I'm kind of a wild card on this panel because I just ended a project. But I didn't fade away. I just ended it decisively. So it was called Johnny's Partay. It was a live, interactive, streaming talk show once a week. So it wasn't exactly a podcast either. And so I'm going to talk about, how I came to that decision. And it was a lot of fun. I really loved it. And but I feel good about picking a decisive stopping point for it. So we'll get into that.
Can you say yeah?
I'm thinking it really hard.
Sitting beside Johnny, we have Mike and Will down there as well for the Wrestling Mayhem Show.
Yes, we've been running for about 2.5 years. Started in January 2006. We do a weekly live record, now on Blog TV for a webcam and on TalkShoe, and put that up for a podcast on top of doing clips of videos for YouTube and everything. And I also do a couple other podcasts, including the WPHA interview, where we occasionally interview some people in the industry, and it's actually spun off from Western PA, juggalos.com, which has been around for 7 years. So I've had a lot of fading problems with that over that time. And the Crapcast and Crap TV, monkeyflixpew.com for my rap group.
So you're doing a lot of things, and none of them have faded out yet.
It's varying levels of importance.
Oh, okay. Priorities. Now, sitting betwixt the Wrestling Mayhem crew,
I'm Will Rutherford, also known as DJLunchbox. I don't really know what I do. I wear a monkey hat, and I wrestle non-animate objects.
Let's stop ripping. Let's stop ripping.
Who are you guys?
He wrestles animate objects.
So, John, what do you do?
I'm the producer for the and I do the technical end with my partner, G.
And G, how long has the G spot been up?
Come November 1st, 3 years.
Okay. And have you guys missed significant chunks of time in that space?
We've had times where we've been a little late on episodes, sometimes due to things that we could not control, sometimes due to the fact that we are a couple, and couples already have enough arguments as it is. I can't even tell you how many arguments over the show we've had.
And yet somehow it's still going.
And somehow we're still going, yeah.
Neither you nor the show is broken up. So
yeah, exactly.
We've only we take breaks around the holidays. We do 2 weeks now for Christmas, and we do. And 2
last
weeks.
year that was a new thing.
Well, yeah, okay. The Christmas episode runs 3 weeks, right? And then forget. And then the New Year episode runs 2 weeks, so.
Where's your Hanukkah episode?
We take, within the Christmas episode, 3 weeks incorporates 7 days of Hanukkah. And, or is it 8? Is it 8?
Yeah.
We only take it to count 7 to 8 days. And,
Hey, we need to celebrate our holidays too, you know.
I feel discriminated. just 1/8.
so that's our break, but we've only missed 1 week, I think, in the 3 years that we've done the show.
Yeah.
Wow. And sitting at the end of our panel, we have Eric Shark, who is one of the cast members of Something to Be Desired, which is the show that I produce. And Eric's been a cast member now for, it's 2.5 years, isn't it?
Yep, this is going into my 3rd season on the show. I'm somewhat of a proxy for Justin on the panel, but I'm also a fairly avid podcast consumer as well, so I can sort of speak to what I've seen in terms of other shows and what they've done. But I've been around Justin enough to have some idea.
Yeah, all the bad ideas
How
are
to
rubbed
keep
off
fresh.
on Eric. So let me start off with the Wrestling Mayhem guys. So you guys have been doing things for 3-ish years now, give or take,
Yes.
with the varying projects. How do you combat the urge to take lengthy breaks? How do you combat the urge to come back to it later?
Well,
we have a big rotating cast.
yeah, that helps.
That definitely helps.
I've had nights where I've had just a bad day at work and just did not want to deal with anything. And I've just told the guys, like, you know what, you guys just kind of do your thing, I'm just going to make sure things are running. And I just sit in on it.
What a
So
luxury.
you can safely delegate.
Yeah, and like you said, at the moment, we have like 5 regular members.
Yeah,
Like, with
something like that. We have a ridiculous. We have like 2 or 3 core members, and then 3 or 4 people who swap in and out, not counting the wrestlers who will randomly stop by because they live down the street.
Yes.
Well,
sometimes
and you
they'll
also
stay with the
incorporate
show.
user-generated content in the show to an extent too.
Mhm.
So you're not the only people producing.
Yeah, exactly.
We've gone so far as to have one of our fans do an entire show for us because we actually we had seen his stuff. He called in and wrote in every week, and we trusted him, and he did a really great 2-hour episode of the Wrestling Mayhem Show.
And we have missed, not so much anymore, but we have missed days like earlier in the cycle. Like, it's just things didn't work out, or everybody had something to do. But more of like back when we most of the crew had school still, and you get in the finals, we cannot lose everybody. So
Now, what happens when you guys miss a day or miss a week? Like, what do you hear back from your audience? Do they pay attention,
yeah,
or is it a personal guilt?
Yeah, normally
both.
normally we try to put up something, anything.
Yeah.
Like we'll do a best of, or we'll replay an old episode or a popular interview.
Like the Golden Girls sitting around the table reminiscing.
Yeah.
I tried to put together best of the last 2 Christmases just so we have that week off. Like, that's really the only off week we have. Or like even when we had the fan Med Mike go ahead and do the show, we still took a recorder remotely and recorded a show at a pizza parlor down from Mellon Arena the night of the show, since it was the same night. And other interesting stuff.
Basically, the key to it, to our method at least, we're stubborn sons of bitches.
Yes.
We're missing a lot of days, especially with finals and class and stuff like that. And I think basically both me and him were just like, we can't miss days.
Yeah, there was just this point where I was just like, you know what, if we really want to keep doing this, we want to make it to be popular. I mean, Paul in his session yesterday was talking about, like, you miss that week, you're going to see that too.
That's true.
In numbers. And we're just not having that.
The funny thing about social media is it's a reliability and a trust issue with your audience. Once you say you're going to be there every Monday or every Wednesday, they need to know you're going to be there. When you're not, they start to think, oh, these guys are faking, they're lying, they're fly by night, they're not going to stick with it. Why should I stick with it?
Or they forget about you and move on to a different podcast that fills that much time.
Well,
And that is not allowed.
Which is why it really helps to carve out a niche that nobody else is mining, because it's much harder for them to leave you for somebody else.
Which is hard because there are so many wrestling podcasts out there. I think we're a lot different than most of them.
We're free. It helps that we're free. We've recently changed our tagline as to,
Yes.
are you sad about the economy? Listen to us, we're free.
Yes. We're changing with the times and the troubles of America.
I think that brings up 2 interesting points. One, if you say you're going to be there every week, you've got to do something. You can't just let a week go by and not do anything and not acknowledge it at least. You know, it's very easy to just put a thing up and say, okay, things were crazy this week. There's not going to be a new episode. You just put a little line on the site. But
respect your audience.
Yeah, exactly. Because yeah, they'll sour on you if you just sort of if you don't treat them with respect. But then that gets you into the two categories of shows. Some podcasts say, okay, every Thursday this is coming out, or every 2 weeks this is coming out. If you set a schedule, you should stick to it. But you don't have to set a schedule. There are a lot of really great shows, like Tiki Bar TV. Sometimes will take 2 months off, or you don't hear anything from them. I think they have the luxury of having sort of a larger audience to begin with. But it's sort of the balance between, okay, am I going to get something out every week or on this regular schedule, or do I just want to wait until I feel like I've got something good enough and prepared enough to put it out there and hope that my audience will subscribe to me in iTunes, and so whenever there's an update, it comes in. Because I've got a number of shows that whenever I see an update, I'm excited. I never expect it, and when it's there, it's great. But
now, the thing about Tiki Bar too is even when they're not producing new shows, their forum is still alive and kicking.
Right.
And they even
That's
take
important.
part in their forum, so you know they're still in existence. They just haven't produced a specific piece of media.
yeah, to keep it interactive. But it can be really daunting to say, okay, I'm going to do this every week, and think, okay, every week for a year, for 2 years, for 5 years. That's a really daunting thing. So just know you don't have to do that. Or if you're going to start producing, get a little ahead. If it's going to be something sort of pre-made.
Well, that's my next question.
It doesn't have
for
to.
John and G. How far ahead do you guys work?
Interesting. Let me tell all the secrets of it. When we first started, we were just like, okay, every Sunday we're going to have an episode up, and then, you know, I wouldn't really sometimes know what I was going to talk about or what was going to happen, and so an episode would get thrown up, or I would want to have a guest on the show, because we do interviews of a lot of artists and things from all over the world, and I would want to have them. And I started getting paranoid that what happens if you tell the listeners, hey, coming up next week, we're going to have this great artist, we don't want you to miss it, and the person doesn't show up for the interview. Or something changes in content or something. I mean, there's a whole realm of things. So usually, I try to be about 2 weeks ahead of the game. That doesn't always happen depending on what's happening. Like right now, I'm not ahead of the game at all because of Podcamp. No, it's okay. I have things lined up and scheduled. You know, it's just that we're pre-recorded. We don't do a live show like you guys do. So it gives us a lot of time, well, me, a lot of time to produce the show and edit the show and put in background music and samples and all different kinds of things to really give it a professional touch that a lot of other podcasts don't give it.
Exactly. It's amazing what an extra week or two of buffer time will allow you to do that you can't do when you're editing it at 6 o'clock in the day that it's due.
I think setting a schedule for yourself is really important as well. There's a comic book podcast I listen to, iFanboy, and they have a very they meet on Friday and they record the thing, and then it goes up Sunday night. It's like there's clearly a very set schedule that they've set for themselves. So then you have these deadlines instead of thinking, okay, this week I got to put something together, and then you can very easily end up, Saturday night, Sunday night, scrambling trying to get it together. It's okay. This is going to happen Friday at 8. It's on my calendar. This is what I do.
Well, we're a weekly show, and I like to let the listeners know what they're going to be in for later on down the road.
Exactly.
I don't just come back next week and find out what we're going to do. I like to give them a little heads up, coming up in this week we're going to do this, or coming up in that week we're going to do that.
Yeah.
And the only way you can guarantee that to happen is if you already have it nailed down.
Yeah, I'm always shy to announce future guests, because there's been a few times where you just don't connect with the guests, especially being the live show. You have to connect with them, make sure you do it that night. And even 2 weeks ago, we were supposed to have Mikey Whipwreck, former ECW champion, on. And we knew he had a prior engagement up to 9 o'clock and the call afterwards. And we tried, and we were promised at the beginning of the show. I did a post for it, and it's like the exact nightmare. It doesn't show or it doesn't happen. Or
So how do you handle it? What do? Do you have to
apologize
apologize to the audience?
We apologize to the audience and say we're still trying to do it.
You
But
have to address it if you promised it.
Well, I have an incident where we actually had a German gay rap group come on the show.
One of those again.
Yeah.
That's
And
when I was on the show.
No. And I did the interview. I loved their music. But when I finally got down to doing the interview and I got it nailed, you couldn't understand hardly anything they said. And I was like, this is not going to fly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So basically, the 30-minute interview had to be chopped down to 10 minutes of just basically what I could.
What was audible?
What was audible, right?
Now, Johnny, you also did a live show, and did you ever have instances in which you didn't have a guest who was supposed to be there? How did you handle it? Or were you forced-
Only once, but we got, what did we got, I think we got someone else at the last minute,
Okay.
you know?
But how did you plan it for live show? Was there a fail-safe?
Well, I think, I mean, basically, I'm the kind of guy that if I'm in front of a camera, like, I can just riff, you know, for an hour. Like, I can do that, especially because the show's interactive, like people can text chat and stuff, so we can do that. But that's, I mean, there was a lot of pre-planning, because, well, first of all, a lot of our guests were like social media people. That was like, it was anyone who did anything interesting in social media. They came from politics or entertainment or business or whatever. So these people kind of know if they don't show up, they know the implications of that in the social media universe, you know, because it's all good. So I think that's sort of an incentive.
It was a self-policing.
Yeah, it's an
audience.
incentive for them to come. And then, yeah, we did have, now I remember, we did have some guests that didn't show up. And at that point, I was doing the show with another guy, Scott, so we could just sort of play off each other, and we had our own projects to talk about.
The value of co-host.
And yeah, exactly. And so it was okay. Luckily, that didn't happen.
Now, what-
Everyone spoke comprehensible English.
That too, yeah. What led to your decision to stop doing the show? You obviously enjoyed it, it was working very well.
I would say it was a combination of things. I mean, one, the biggest one was I moved. So I was in DC. At this point, I was doing it with another guy. It was really a co-production. I moved to Philly, and so I just think the thought of going back to doing it myself was, I just wasn't into it. Also, there was definitely going to be a big break because of the move and just logistical stuff and everything. There were at least going to be a couple of weeks when I couldn't do it. So, you know, if there's going to be a big break, that kind of would suck. And I think this show did work well in a lot of ways, but I was putting a huge amount of work into it. I think it would have, one of the things people were talking about is having a bigger team. Like, if I had a bigger team or had, yeah, and that's probably largely my fault. Like, I probably could have worked to recruit more people and stuff. It would have been less, I don't know, maybe you know, because you have a big team working with you, but yet you're still totally busting your ass. So maybe it doesn't work that way. But
I'd like to say it does.
I have to say that although I got a huge amount out of the show, it was like a great playground. The thing I like best is I could really try a lot of different things, like contests and like a doodle contest where people draw doodles and then send them in, and we mash them up and make videos. Or we had like a save a puppy haiku contest. You know, it was like, I was like, what's the stickiest, like, what can people not resist? You know, puppies. So like, I could do, you know, who's gonna hate on the puppies? So it was fun to like, to do all this stuff, and I met like amazing guests, and so that's also wonderful. But I kind of felt like, A, the move made it a logical breaking point, and B, although I just think it's okay to stop. Like, it's okay. You know, lots of things stop. Like, I went to college and then I left, and then I did other things. And I had a job and it was good, and then I moved on to another job. So I don't think it's. I think it's totally fine to do that, and it's maybe better to do it to just do it than to just have this lingering, painful, you know, erratic, sporadic exit.
I think when you said
You know?
pain, Eric's hand
No,
shot up.
there's I don't know about calling it a trend necessarily, but you definitely see quite a bit of content saying, okay, we're going to, if you look at Zay Frank, I'm going to do this for a year and then
Right,
stop.
right.
You look at something like Clark and Michael, 10 episodes and we're done.
Yeah.
Like if you have this idea, that doesn't mean you have to do it in perpetuity. You can say, I've got this idea, and there's a beginning, there's a middle, and an end.
Yeah.
And so that's a little more manageable. You can
Yeah.
see, you know, a light at the end of the tunnel. You don't necessarily have to be going, and then say, okay, this is my one project, and now stay tuned for the next thing I'm going to do.
One thing also that's fun, like as far as ending it, I wasn't just like, okay, this is the last episode. Like I told people in advance,
Right,
and
you're
also most of the guests were from the DC area, so you know, we had a big finale show where we invited everyone who had been on the show. So, you know, maybe 50 people showed up or something, and we had a few minutes with each person, and it was like live audience, and it was kind of a special way to go out. So we kind of went out on a high, which was nice.
Well, that's the difference between dying on the vine midstream and knowing.
Making a conscious choice.
Yeah.
Has anybody
There's
else
a
in the panel
question.
set a time when you know you want to end the show, or is it going on forever?
Not really. We've discussed what we would do if one of us moves, how we can continue the show. I think I don't think we've ever even mentioned. you know, how long should we do
we
this
never
for.
thought of an end.
It's the Voldemort of concepts.
Yeah,
Yeah, we shall not
exactly.
mention.
And then I've
Yeah.
had a couple projects that seem to be at points look like they're almost dying on the vine, and I considered, like, I've struggled with years about what's my page, jolos.com, whether I should kill it or not, or pass it on to somebody else. Because when it started, I was here at AIP, and it was a group effort amongst friends, and we came up with so much stuff, and it was a lot of energy behind it, because we all just sat in the lobby between classes and came up with stuff. We had a webcomic going on it. We had coming up with events for everybody to meet up at, and people wrote on it all the time. And ever since everybody kind of left school and went on, it's hard to get more people. I keep recruiting more people and more people. Sometimes I'll post a couple times and that's it. Sometimes I'll post for a good 6 months and they're gone, or they'll post just every once in a while when they have a show.
But the bottom line is, it's yours, and you feel ownership and pride in it, so you can't let it die to you try.
But I can't do it myself, so I'm trying to find the people that will work with me. It's
You
hard.
need a
It's hard to find the passionate people, especially when you had that at one time. You know, the chemistry and everything going on. Like the only thing that matches that is what we have with the Wrestling Mayhem Show. Because there's at least 3 of us I know are going to show up every week and are going to be into it.
I think,
I would like to add though, because our show would have, but what you just said about relying on other people and things like that, our show would have died had we tried that.
So you guys have
Because
to rely on each other.
we were relying on people to come in and help to make the show more interesting by having
You
more
already
than
had to
just
go
me
on.
talking.
Removed from the show.
And we actually had to start removing people from the show because they started to have ideas of want to take the show in a direction that it wasn't supposed to be going in, or they wanted to take over the show.
Yeah, that becomes a question of ownership too. So often we say that social media is an extension of us personally. Whether you're doing a fictional show, whether you're doing a blog, whether you're doing something that's informational journalism, it's you. It's partly you. I'm not even on my own show, but it's me, which is why I can't let Selling Living Desire die after 6 years, because it's sort of my representation to the social media world. We take extended breaks. We took a break that was supposed to be 2 weeks and turned into 5 months, but we come back at the end because it's almost like that. It's the X you can't get away from. That's what my show is to me. We need time apart. We can see other people, but then we come back in the end because I can't live without you. It's that sort of thing.
I think all this speaks to doing what you want to do, and I know with Justin, the appeal of Something to Be Desired was, well, what if we can follow these characters through their lives, through what happens if they get married and they have children, and no one has really been able to explore just a really long-term journey with characters like we can do now. So that was what he wanted to do. That's what he wants to do. That's what attracts him to doing this project. But the core of it has to be, what do you want to do? What do you want to say? And it's got to be something that you want to express, and not just, okay, I'm going to put something up and get a lot of hits and maybe get some money from this. That cannot be the driving force. It has to be, what do I want to say? What do I want to do? And there aren't, hard and fast rules. So you can do it however you want to do it, but it's got to be an expression of yourself. It's got to be something that you feel a compulsion to do, something that you feel like, I have to express this, and I don't care if nobody watches it. This is something that's fulfilling and important to me.
And when it
And that's what's
ceases
going to keep you going.
You're allowed to stop doing it.
Yeah.
We're all allowed to get off the
Yeah, there are no rules.
And I
So
think
you
it's a
gotta
good
keep
thing
doing
that, Johnny's a great example of somebody who could have kept doing this as long as he wanted to, because you feel almost that obligation after a while. You're big, you would like to continue to do what you've been doing, it's been successful, but if it's not working, man, am I letting somebody down? Am I letting myself down? Am I selling out by not continuing? And you've sort of got to power through that and say, well, if it's not what I'm really passionate about anymore, why half-ass it? Go off and do something new that you're really excited about. So, Johnny, do you have anything new that you're going to start doing now because you've got the time?
Yeah, I do. There's something that it's going to be more of a blog that's sort of sprinkled with media, as makes sense. But yeah, I'm still looking for a domain name. So if anyone has any good ideas, let me know. It's on this psychological concept called flow, which is this state of being thoroughly engaged, kind of in the zone, in the moment, where what you're doing is the perfect match kind of for your abilities. It's not too hard, it's not too easy, and you're just in there. So I'm really interested in this concept, and it's going to be sort of what it is, how to get in that state, and how to stay in that state longer. And then, I'm sure we'll have interviews with people and links to things and so on and so forth. So that
is this an indefinite project, or do you have a time limit on this one?
No, I don't have it. No, maybe that's something I should think about. Maybe I should think about like where am I trying to go with it or whatever. But for now, it's like it's something I'm really interested in. I want to explore it, and then as things evolve, then I could go, okay, how's this going? What am I getting out of it? What what are the kind of pros and cons of doing it, and I'll see it. If I'm getting a lot of great, if on balance it seems like this is great for me to do, I'll keep doing it. And if not, maybe I'll set I don't know. I just have to see. I just have to see what makes
Once
sense.
you quit once, you can keep quitting. It's okay.
Absolutely.
You've crossed that threshold. The rest of us are reluctant to do.
But I think it's really, like people say, it's like it's got to be what you're interested in. I'm interested in this, so that's the biggest metric of success. Are you still really interested in it? And is that interest overshadow the amount of stuff you have to do to keep that interest going? So
I saw one other hand over here, and then I want to throw this out to questions.
One other thing I wanted to talk about, I think about deadlines a lot, and when to pull the plug. A lot of it depends on the nature of your show, because we do our show because we love wrestling, we love to talk about wrestling, but essentially we're a news gathering organization, because every week there's developments, there's new shows, there's things happening, backstage news, front stage news. They're out doing promotional things, and we bring all these things to our listeners. Like we're like CNN for wrestling, you know what I mean? Yeah. Except with much more skewed commentary. So.
And kind of aside of that, one of our members, Doc Remedy, and Mad Mike, just started a Heroes podcast about 3 episodes ago, and called Level 5 on TalkShoe. And it's one of those, like, that's kind of seasonal. Like, I can't imagine them, and we've talked about this a lot. Like, we've been talking about it since last season about doing it. Of course, the short season with strike kind of messed things up. But it's one of those things like, what do you do when you get to like the holiday break when they stop having episodes? What do you do when you get to that summer off? Now thankfully Heroes, they run comics, like they have a new comic up every week.
So there's always ancillary stuff you could be talking
They're
about.
an excellent example of put content out there regardless. It doesn't matter what it is, you put content out there.
But you know, you got to decide, is that enough for you to talk about for a week, every once a week for like, they do like an hour, hour and a half show for that off season, you know, or the new speculations about the new season or anything, does that get old? Do you take a hiatus along with the show?
That's a good
like there's
point.
Lost podcasts that are very
Yeah.
popular, and I haven't explored much, but you know, what do they do when Lost is off for several weeks? And or any other, you know, especially, you know, television fandom-based thing like that. Wrestling has no off season, so we kind of luck out.
So,
Yeah,
if you're
just
thinking
so
about doing any
patiently
social media,
trying to-
make sure that's got
Absolutely.
longevity. Yes.
I definitely just wanted to say, I think that there's like a distinct difference between doing a podcast that a lot of them are very much like news gathering type things, whether it's a tech podcast or whatever. It kind of reflects around of whatever's going on currently, whether it's wrestling news, whether it's like, you know, but when you have something that's more like episodic content, I feel like it's a little easier to be like, okay, well, we're gonna do 2 seasons or we're gonna do 20 episodes or whatever. Do you think that maybe it's a practice other podcasters should pick up more? Because with news type podcasts, there's always going to be content unless whatever you're talking about dies off completely, which is most likely not going to happen. But if you're doing a show, like I do a show called What's It All About Web 2.0, and when I started it, before I started, I actually questioned to myself, is there enough content to sustain it for a longer period of time? Because it's essentially a Web 2.0 podcast for beginners to the space, or people who want to learn. Eventually, at what point is there like nothing new to talk about? Well, somebody came to me and they're like, well, eventually your beginners will become intermediate people, and those intermediate people will bring in new beginners, and you'll be able to keep going. But it was definitely something I considered. So, I mean, would you say that it's a practice that should be picked up by more podcasters, even for just news like things, or you should say maybe at some point you need to stop, or at some point you should say, okay, well, we're going to do this project for this long, or you say keep going as long as your heart's in it.
In your case, you could also just become Web 3.0 What's It All About.
Well, yeah.
But guys, any thoughts?
I think you have to change it to business. I mean, it's the old television mentality. You're on till you're popular, and once your ratings go down, you get canceled.
Yep.
But with something like our show, I know we're already planning to modify it and become something different. We're not just going to be professional wrestling. We're going to start talking about mixed martial arts, and we're going to branch out and try to keep it going that way.
You know, and you know, we don't just talk about like WWE. We start to try to cover more of the local scenes. We're trying to branch out and actually see about getting more independence from across the country.
Yeah.
So.
Guys, any other thoughts on that?
Well, I've seen a lot of things when a lot of podcasts when they start to get some audiences, and it feels like, okay, we've kind of tread this ground a lot. They start to spring up other forms of media. To go back to the iFanboy podcast, first it was just the website. Then it became the website and the weekly podcast. Then it became website, weekly podcast, and occasional movie reviews. Then website, weekly podcast, occasional movie reviews, and then interviews with comics creators. And then there was a video component that started popping up once a week. Then it became a daily video component. So there's always like a slightly different direction. You don't want to pile up a whole bunch of stuff on yourself, but that's another way to go.
I wonder what is your URL, Web 2.0, what's it all about?
No, my URL is what'sitallaboutweb.com.
Okay, so that leaves you a lot of flexibility,
Oh, I-
because say Web 2.0, you know, that's like, maybe it's like grunge, you know, maybe it's tied to a certain period
Right.
or
I
something.
feel like
So
the-
that's good, you have the flexibility.
Just dress up in flannel and put it in the corner.
Okay. Yeah, that's hi.
No, but that's I think that's a good point. If you can say, okay, this topic is played out. It's on the website. And now I'm talking about intermediate tools. If you're not intermediate, you want to check
You can
beginner
go
stuff,
back and
I've got a whole
Right.
library of stuff you can click on, you can go to, that's right
And
there.
I-
And then
one
so
interesting
there's whole
thing-
new fresh stuff you can
Yeah, one interesting thing I found is that when I first started, so you launch a podcast, and I'm only like 2 episodes in, and so most of the people that had seen it were like, oh, this is good, but at the same time, the people and the medium that I was using to bring to all these people was in a Web 2.0 medium. Most people that were watching it
Sure.
are already familiar with the tool that I was talking about. So somebody asked me, okay, well, this is really cool, but how do you expect to bring
Right.
something that's
Right.
in a Web 2.0 space to people who don't understand the Web 2.0 space, and how do you, and that I think has been like my biggest challenge is I'm hoping that it can kind of grow like word of mouth, and I have people like say, well, we showed it to other people to explain, you know, Twitter to our friends or whatever, and yeah, so.
Other questions? Anybody else?
I think, yeah, if you feel like you sort of played that out, there's no reason why you can't move on to something else. And especially with the internet, that it can live, what you've done already can live there forever.
Oh, yes. Is there anybody here in the audience who's thinking about launching something right now, or who is thinking about ending something right now? Where are you folks in the media creation process?
I had a podcast about a year ago, and it faded. I was doing it over Skype with two guys who live across the country, and basically we all got lives at the same time. Our schedules never worked out. But it was something that I really enjoyed doing, and I'm trying to think of either should I just kind of launch back into it and see if I can pick up old listeners, or if I should try and just launch something completely new.
Oh, I would love to be able to help you answer that question. Over the years, as our show, I should say, has gotten more successful, I get a lot of, I want to start a show, I'd love to start a show, I'd like to do a show, I want to do a show. I mean, everyone talks in your ear about what ideas they have, and you can help me do this, and you can help me do that, and this idea, and this idea. And I'm going to tell you right out front, and open and honest as I can, rely on you and you alone. Yeah. If you can get other people into it who will love it for 4 weeks, fabulous. But you're not going to find someone who's going to love what you're doing as much as what you're doing as much as you do. And I found that in my show. I've had people, I love to do the show, I want to come on every week. They came on every week, blah, 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 blah. Then it was, I want to take over the show, I want to do this, I want to do this. Like, no, bitch, this is my show.
Eric, what are you going to say?
Well, if there is a pre-existing fan base, I think there would be nothing wrong with sort of relaunching in that same space, or sort of redirecting to a new space. I think it would be foolhardy to not try to reach out to a previous fan base if it was there before. But that doesn't mean that you have to do the same thing. It doesn't have to be in the same form. It doesn't need to be the same URL. I mean, there are tons of websites that say, okay, I'm moving to this new site, and they let the pre-existing people know well ahead of time. Okay, starting on this date, we're going to be over here, and then it seems fresh and new, because that's what the internet tends to gravitate to. If you look at like iTunes, it's always what's new, what's the newest thing. So to sort of say, okay, I'm going back and doing this again, but then it's under the banner of something new, maybe it can draw new eyes.
You got to keep
reach out to the old people.
You got to keep an open mind. Like, you start a show as a format, and that's fine. But that doesn't mean that the show can't evolve and encapsulate a lot of other different elements or segments or people and stuff like that. But you have to be that stable foundation, that stable core, because
Sure.
And here's another thing about all that too. I'll get to you with one thing about the thought was, so you end what you're doing right now. It doesn't mean that your audience who was interested in what you were doing is going to leave you. For example, whenever Johnny starts next, I'm sure, I'm not trying to guess your thought process, but if you build up an audience with the previous show, there's no reason not to email them and bring them aboard and say, okay, you like what I did before, try this out. Because what we do is so personal, a lot of folks are going to like, not everybody's going to, but a lot of folks will like almost anything we do because they like the style we use, they like who we are, they like, especially if you are your own show, they like you. So even if your topic changes, they still want to see what Johnny has to say. Will?
I completely agree. If the people that we talk to, they can get wrestling news absolutely anywhere. They tune in because of the way we deliver it, our opinions on it, and the general ridiculousness that goes along with it.
look how cute they are.
And look how cute we are.
Which is why you're hoping that if you guys launch into something else, like a mixed martial arts, they'll follow you there because they want it, not even about the subject, but what you guys are going to say about the subject.
Right.
I don't want to blow up my own head, but I feel the same way. If I moved to something else, our listeners would follow us.
And I think all the more if you're someone like, I really recommend if people haven't checked him out so far, because he just has a lot of energy and he's doing a lot of things right. Check out Will Rivero today. So, yeah, Walt, sorry. He is really, he's really engaged. He's making media, right? That's basically, he makes a lot of different channels, but one is a podcast. and he's really interacting with his audience. So he's now really focused on something, right? It's a music-oriented thing, but if he moves to some other thing because he has this relationship with people, you know, some are going to go with him, some won't, but some will, and then he'll pick up some new people who are interested in whatever that new topic is, but you really are the brand with this stuff.
If you want to see Walt, if you want to see an example, at 3 o'clock he'll be right here recording his show live.
Yeah.
So if you guys want to see a video podcast, then that's it. Art?
Yeah, never mind, like I started things and launched them and then killed things almost all the time. You know, the Web 2.0 thing, the only thing I've done is a mini-series that had a little bit of consistency, but I don't really like having the grind of always having to do something. But my biggest example is I published magazines in the past, and then I shifted to books. And the value of an old magazine is nil. But the value of a book is much more preserved. You know, so even if you could make your podcast more timeless, I think it would be much better. And I really appreciate the freedom of not having a deadline. So I sort of have like a more of a book mentality that I'm going to try to do something, and then the backlist of the books are very valuable to publishers. You know, and out of the front list, maybe 3% are going to pull the whole weight of the company, but the backlist is going to do better than generally the front list.
That's a very good point. Last question from Jason, then I'm going to switch over.
But on your subject of being timeless, a lot of it just depends on the topics you're covering.
Sure.
And the format you're going for, it's all part of the process of building your podcast or blog. Is it going to be situational? Is it going to be in here and now? You know, obviously stuff like fiction can last longer. And you know, is it something that will last? Is it something that you can refer back to as a reference or whatever? Or is it not? So that's important.
And either one is perfectly valid. You just have to know what you're getting yourself into when you start. So we have just enough time, but I'm going to bore you all with the first episode of Something to Be Desired Season 6, which I threatened to do. So thank you guys for being on the panel. Thank you, panel leaders, for asking questions. And yeah, so it was decided earlier on, basically because John said I could, that after doing this for 6 years, despite the fact that I just finished this at 5:45 this morning, it's proof that you can avoid burnout. You just can't ever sleep. So let's see if I can pull this up here. This is a 10-minute and 13-second video. Feel free to flee the room right